Well, in 2006, two colleagues of mine and I completed a book called Polarized America, which tracked the rise of political polarization in the United States, starting in the mid-1970s through the current period. The main focus of the book is the role that increasing economic inequality plays in shifting the partisan bases and therefore leading to ideological differences on economic policy matters. The primary argument is that they both cause each other. So on one hand, the increase in economic inequality caused by a number of international and domestic economic factors led to a divergence in the economic interests of Republican voters and Democratic voters, leading the politicians, their representatives, to take much more divergent positions. But in turn, the polarization and gridlock that produced led to policy stasis or gridlock that helped exacerbate economic inequality. We're currently in the very beginning stages of a study on the politics of economic crises, tentatively titled Political Bubbles, Financial Crises, and the Challenge of American Democracy. Basically, in the book, we look at political processes such as polarization, gridlock, the role of ideology and activists, special interest, and sort of creating what we call a political bubble, which is in some ways analogous to an economic bubble. It's in part based on greed, self-interest, inaccurate expectations about the future. And we trace out how the politics that undergirds the economic crises helps exacerbate the crises and make it harder to resolve after the bubble is burst. Well, that's the main argument that we're making, that if you go back throughout American history, you can find that periods that are with financial crises are also periods that were highly polarized, ideological politics. You find that there was political pressure on the government not to regulate in advance of the collapse, like we saw more recently. So it's really making a broad historical argument about these common factors that undergird financial crises. Well, one of the points we make is that there's a big difference between political bubbles and economic bubbles. One of the features of an economic bubble is that expectations in the economic sphere change fairly dramatically. You go from a situation where everyone thinks this is going to go on forever, this is great, to a situation where everyone's expectations about economics change dramatically. So they lend too much they go from lending too much money to not lending enough money, for example. Since ideology undergirds political bubbles, we find that people's beliefs about political responses to crises do not change as dramatically. It's not as if free market conservatives woke up the day after Lehman collapsed and said, this is a whole new world, we need to adopt a new approach to these bubbles. They essentially brought out the same ideological arguments that they had used for some time. And so ideological conflict in the aftermath of the bubble is one of the impediments to recovery. And I think we've seen quite a bit of that recently.